Hi, so 7.1.5 has gone up on the PTR, and of course you're probably wanting to know what, if any, Retribution Paladin changes there have been. Well, there have been a small number. I fully expect more to come through. It doesn't feel like it's covered everything that they want in 7.1.5, but there are a few small changes. One of the really strange ones, I've got rid of Crusade just to show you Avenging Wrath. The tooltip, it sort of does the same thing as far as I can tell, unless I'm missing something. But what the tooltip is now saying in the patch, I'm on the PTR here, increases all damage done by 35% and all healing done by 35%. Now, this is what makes me wonder that they've got changes planned for it. Because on live what it says is increases all damage and healing done by 35%. So you can ask yourself, well, what is the difference? It just looks like they've added words to mean the same thing. And at the moment, that's exactly what it is. Usually when they do something like this, it's because they're halfway through some changes. So I think we'll keep an eye on that one. In terms of the general abilities, nothing majorly has changed. It's been with talents. There's been a couple of changes with talents. Now, the first one is Fist of Justice. So in live at the moment, in patch 7.1, our Fist of Justice reduces the cooldown of Hammer of Justice by 8 seconds every time we use a Holy Power spender. Now this has changed slightly. It now reduces the cooldown by 2.5 seconds for every Holy Power spent. So if what you're spending your Holy Power on, as I am at the moment, is purely like Templar's Verdict and Divine Storm, which costs 3 each, it's a technical nerf, very slight nerf, because those Holy Power spenders are now only going to reduce it by 7.5 seconds as opposed to 8 seconds. It's not horrendous. But I suppose it's more beneficial for people who may still use Justicar's Vengeance, whether for soloing or PvP or whatever, I'm not sure. Because obviously that's a Holy Power spender, but because it costs 5 Holy Power, then I guess that will now reduce it by, well, 12.5 seconds. As opposed to the 8 seconds it was before. So in the balance, I don't know. I mean, it's not a huge nerf. It's a technical nerf, but a very, very small amount unless you're using Justicar's Vengeance. And if you do use Justicar's Vengeance even now and then it's actually a buff. So perhaps when you're soloing mobs, tough mobs, and you decide to use Justicar's Vengeance, stunning the mobs so that you can use Justicar's Vengeance to get extra damage and therefore healing from it, maybe when you're soloing elite mobs, well, that stun is going to come off cooldown more quickly, so you could say in that situation it's actually a buff. In terms of other things, Divine Intervention has changed. Again, it's a slight nerf. Now, the cheat death effect of it, which is largely probably what we take Divine Intervention for, is still intact. However, it doesn't reduce the cooldown of Divine Shield by nearly as much now. It only reduces it by 20%. So that means our Divine Shield will have a 4-minute cooldown as opposed to a 2.5-minute cooldown. Bit of a nerf to our survivability. Now, feelings on that I'll probably have to consider with more care. It is going to reduce our survivability, of course, on fights where we wouldn't take Cavalier. But then we look across to this one. This is new. Judgment of Light. Now, this is an ability that was in early alpha and I liked very much. And I was disappointed that they removed it. So what this does, by the way, this has replaced Seal of Light. Seal of Light was, remember, the thing that allowed us to spend Holy Power, and it's still in live now, and get a passive movement speed. But of course, just as we said in the alpha and beta, no one will use it, because although there are certain theoretical situations where you might say, maybe, just the way it worked meant you never would. And it's quite clear. I don't know what everyone's using, but obviously Blizzard do. They're monitoring it. They've clearly seen that just people are not using it. So they replaced it with this. So this is a defensive in many ways, but a beneficial defensive. So Judgment now applies Judgment of Light to the target, causing the next 40 successful attacks against the target to heal the attacker. So it's not just you, your friends as well in your raid, in your dungeon, for, 6k. This effect can only occur once per second on each target. Now, the actual amount of healing there is pretty crap, but the general idea is sort of there. And also, if you think about it in these terms, if you had a full raid of, say, 30 people, and they can do this every second, in that, let's say there's 20 people who need healing and are DPS in the target, then you're talking about 120,000 healing a second, which is 1.2 million over the 10 seconds. It is 10 seconds it's active, isn't it? Oh, it's just the first 40 successful attacks. So in actual fact, it'll be about 1.6 million it'll do in total. So it's one of those things when a lot of people are taking damage, say during Dreadthorns on Cenarius, this could actually be beneficial. Now, it's changed slightly from what it used to be, because what it used to be is just an ability that you placed on the target, and then people attacking it got the healing. This now just means Judgment does it. It's not an extra ability, and Judgment, of course, you know, it has a very short cooldown. You will be using this quite regularly, because we always want to maintain that Judgment debuff. So this actually might have some serious utility that actually makes us, I'm not saying definitely will, but makes us at times think, well, do we even want to take Divine Intervention? So we might actually, on this tier here, have a genuine choice, because looking ahead, especially to Nighthold, there are some fights where Cavalier would look a bit tasty as well. So there's definitely a change on there. Now, in terms of, I mean, Holy Wrath, I'm not even going to talk about them. We're ignoring Holy Wrath completely until they get rid of that as well. There's no changes yet to Crusade. They had threatened changes to Crusade, saying that they wanted changes. At the moment, it's fine as it is. It's still the same, but changes could happen. Now, where other changes have come in, is indirect changes to the spec, is in the legendaries. Now, first of all, there's 2 extra legendaries, which I'll go over in a minute. But also, they've buffed some legendaries. Sephir's Secret. So what this says now, if we compare it to live, successfully applying a loss of control effect, which it is in live at the moment, or interrupting an enemy, which of course happens much more often, grants you 70% increased movement speed and 25% haste for 10 seconds. Now, of course, during Crusade, of course, our haste is a bit poisonous. We really don't need any more haste. But this is going to be equally as useful when you're not during Crusade, okay? Or in PvP, I suppose. But I don't really want to talk about PvP. I'm not a PvP player. But for PvE, just getting this haste boost when it actually will be useful outside of that Crusade, in an interrupt situation, we will want to make sure that we are using the interrupts. So now if we have this legendary, we'll have a benefit from using interrupts or successfully applying those interrupts, or the movement speed losses. You know, this presumably works with Hand of Hindrance as well. Will actually give us that haste boost. So this is now significantly better. But let's have a look at the new legendaries. Now, the first one is Kil'jaeden's Burning Wish, which is a trinket. So first of all, it's a stat stick, which is nice. You know, it's got strength, haste, and mastery on it. No versatility. So what it does, it's an on-use effect as well, which is quite nice. It's not a random proc where you can get lucky or not. Fires a vortex of destruction that seeks your current enemy. When it reaches the target, it explodes, dealing about 1 million fire damage with my stats to all nearby enemies within 10 yards, with a 1.25 minute cooldown. So basically, it's an AoE. It's a decent amount of damage, you could say, on anything, but certainly it's a really good A&E. A&E? You'll need A&E if you get in the way of it, I suspect. AoE, I apologise. So, I mean, I suppose where it'd be really good is, let's say, because we're slow as fuck, and we're running towards a load of ads, we've got to switch target, we've got to run to a load of ads, we can fire this off. I don't know what the actual range of it is. I mean, I know the range of the AoE effect is 10 yards, but if you're firing it at your target, how far away can we be and it'll still work? Will it be as much as 30 or 40 yards? Because it's going to seek it out, remember. We can do it from... The implication really is that we can do it from range. and then it'll explode on all the ads before we actually get to it and start doing our stuff with Divine Storms. This sounds very interesting. I don't know how effectively it will sim for general use, but certainly interesting. Now the shoulders have really got me interested. Ashes to Dust. Shoulders. First of all, you'll notice the secondary stats on them. Crit and haste. Good choice. Now, what this does, enemies hit by your Wake of Ashes take 20% increased damage from you for 6 seconds. The fact that you are getting this extra 20% increased damage at a time when you're going to be firing off quite a lot of spenders, and if you've got the cloak as well, my goodness, this is going to be a very heavy amount of damage in that very short burst. And of course, it's every time you use Wake of Ashes throughout the fight, 20-second increased damage immediately after that. And you've got to think about it, when you're using Wake of Ashes, of course, you've got 5 holy power straight away. So spend, build a couple of times, get another. You'll easily get 3 spenders off in this time with it. So that's 3 Templar's Verdicts or Divine Storms that are going to have an extra 20% increased damage. That's actually very tasty. Again, I don't know how it's going to sim in comparison to the others, because remember, Blizzard have said very recently and quite clearly that they have no plans to allow us to wear a 3rd legendary. So even if they back down on that and allow us to later on the expansion, it's not going to be imminently. It's not going to be with this patch. So if we do get this, and we've got a choice of having, say, what are currently the really top ones, Liadrin's Fury Unleashed and Whisper of the Nathrezim, then we might actually have a decision to be made. But of course, what we'll be really waiting for on these two are the sims. What do the sims say about them? People will need to test them, of course. And what are the sims actually going to say on something like that? You know, the worst of the lot has actually been buffed to the point where it's probably not the worst anymore. That probably goes to Chain of Thrain now. Or it would, but for the fact Chain of Thrain has also been buffed. So what we've got here now, what it does in live is it's a general paladin ability, legendary ability, whereby if we put a blessing on someone, not a greater blessing, but a blessing, then we heal that same target. Now, it's of limited use to anyone, but for Retribution Paladin, it's like, okay, occasionally we might put it on someone just if we think someone's going to die, especially in a dungeon. People might wonder why they're getting Blessing of Freedom on them, for example. But here we've now got something much more interesting. Avenging Wrath increases healing done by an additional 70%. All right, maybe like solo situation or PvP. Okay, world PvP, I take it. I don't know to what extent legendaries work in some types of PvP. And increases damage done by an additional 25%. So when you use your Crusade, immediately you're not just starting off on 3.5% extra damage and haste because you've started off with just 1 stack. You've got this extra 25% as well. So you're already on doing quite a lot of damage, and it's going to ramp up even more. This is looking very, very interesting. So looking at this now, if we're being serious, it looks like we are going to have a good 5, potentially 6 legendaries out of 10 that are damage increases. Now, if we look at it in live at the moment, we would say we basically have 2 that are actual direct damage increases. That's not to say that I think all the others are rubbish. There's a couple that I think are okay in live. But in terms of ones that offer a direct damage increase, we have Liadrin's Fury Unleashed with Whisper of the Nathrezim. So we knew that these were our 2 best ones by virtue of the fact that they're the only 2 that provide a clear direct damage increase in hard PvE content, let's say, so raids and high-level mythic dungeons. So in addition, we've got the 2 new ones, and now we have Chain of Thrain. This is obviously also a key damage increasing ability. We could almost imagine Sephir's Secret as well, because we will get far more opportunities to apply a successful interrupt, even though it may not necessarily coincide with when we want to do most of our damage, or get, you know, because of the haste we're going to get from it. We might choose other times. We can't choose. We've got to be able to interrupt something. But still, the fact that this will also there are still going to be legendaries that are much better than others. But what it means is that now much more of our legendaries are going to be really good. And I feel I should just finish off by talking about Prydas. This is another legendary which is much maligned at the moment. Largely, I would say, just because of all that mastery on it, which of course is our least useful stat. But the legendary effect on it has also been buffed. So what we do now, instead of every 5, if you don't take damage for 5 seconds, you get a bit of an absorb shield on you, where some people say, well, there's sometimes when you're just taking constant damage. And also the fact for tanks, it's obviously a bit of a non-starter. So now what happens is every 30 seconds, you just basically get an absorb shield for 30% of your maximum health. It will last for 30 seconds or until consumed. So it doesn't matter. You don't have to have a period where you're not taking damage for a few seconds. This will just automatically be applied every 30 seconds, come what may. So you're going to have this 30% of your maximum health worth of absorb shield, which is all right. It's not amazing. It's not going to boost it towards one of the very best legendaries, especially now that we've got several that boost our damage. But do you know what? If it ends up being a DPS increase to wear it because of the stats, the legendary effect is also actually going to come in useful. It just will come in useful. It will certainly help smooth out that damage from a defensive point of view. So the only ones now, thinking in terms of someone whose main focus is raiding, that I would be disappointed to get, would be Justice Gaze, although this is potentially useful in dungeons, so this is also not terrible. Agrimar's Stride, a lot of people like this because of the movement speed, and in Nighthold certainly there's plenty of movement to be done, so it may go up in my estimation in Nighthold, but the fact of the matter is it's got mastery on it. Mastery, as far as we can tell at the moment, is still going to be our weakest stat, and when you don't have brilliant natural movement, and I'm not saying it's terrible, it's not the worst, but it's not brilliant, you tend to work out ways of not having to move at all. And in that sort of environment, what does it matter that you can move a little bit faster when you're trying to stand still as much as possible anyway? So I'm not really going for that. But apart from those two, all the rest of them are now looking, oh yeah, I'd wear that. If they were the only two you had. So legendaries have definitely going to be improved in 7.1.5. They may still tune things. We'll have to see how it ends up in the end. But the legendary thing now, I don't think there's going to be very many Retribution Paladins who are going to get a legendary and go, oh no, it's that one. Because, they all now have their uses. And that's pretty good. So there we are. That's sort of up to date with the changes so far in the PTR. As I say, I do expect more changes to come, especially around Avenging Wrath, because that wording changes, unless I'm missing something obvious, a little bit inexplicable. There must be a reason for it. And also the Judgment of Light will also be interesting. I need to sort of think in a bit more detail as to how interesting that would be. But in a fight where I don't expect to need to use Bubble, and I don't need to use lots of movement speed, then I am actually very excited for this. Because as I say, I missed, when they got rid of this in Alpha, I missed it. And it wasn't, this is better than it was in Alpha, because that was like a 1 minute cooldown separate ability. This is like just working off your judgment. It's not a massive amount of healing per hit, but across the raid, it's possibly helpful. Possibly helpful. This is a regular passive amount of healing. On top of the healing our Divine Storm can also do, once we've got, which I've just got the trait for as well, we can actually do little bits of healing. Nice. So there we go. I hope you found it interesting. As always, if you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share. And until next time, I'll see you later.